Hey folks. So, across a few different platforms, I've mentioned how I used to be homeless more than once. So, I'll tell you about a couple of those times in this video. So, unlike how Hollywood portrays homelessness, I've actually never lived in a box, let alone under a bridge by a river, nor in a tent city. And I've never been a creeper around kids or panhandling, although some movies have portrayed in some way or another. Instead, the first time was right after high school, after I graduated. My parents decided to, I suppose you could say, do a little test. They didn't tell me what was going to happen, they just said, Jason, I think it's time for you to move out. I was a little surprised, but okay. So I moved out with only a few sets of clothes and went to the local mission. And it was only just for a few days. But in those few days, I learned something interesting. I had basically no resources. A lot of what I had learned up to that point was stripped away from me. To the point that I had to learn to improvise based on what little I had at all. Things I got used to, I had to think, okay, I'm not able to do this like that anymore, so how am I going to do that? Some things I learned were basically impossible without what I knew. Others were doable, but with a little clever thinking. These things I never learned in school. Not at all. But at least when another thing I learned in that time was the mission, the local mission there, had a time-based policy. You were supposed to get up at a certain time and get out of the building by a certain time. You had an entire day to do whatever. And I do literally mean whatever you wanted to. The mission opened up again for you to come back at a certain time. So you had to learn time resource as well, time management. So I learned that as a pretty good resource. And I even knew a couple of the guys that stayed there as well. Far, far, far longer than I'd even been alive. So yeah, that was an interesting thing to learn about when I was homeless. Second time was the first time I lived in Huntington, not even as a college student at Marshall. Although that would be another time I tried to be a college student anyway. And what happened in that case? I just moved there. I literally did not think about one single step about what it would take to move on my own. I just had everything in my name brought with me, went to the local mission again, completely new area. All the friends I had in the town were college kids, but the time I moved there was Thanksgiving break. They were all out of town with their families. So I had to learn everything all anew. And it was not easy. I was homeless for a couple months and learned a new set of things to figure out. Trying to figure things out when, again, no resources really. Starting afresh. And yeah, learn a couple things here and there. But at the time, okay, I should also mention that the first time I was only 19. I graduated a little late. Second time was on my 21st birthday. And honestly, I'm actually a mental late bloomer. Unlike the average mind, it takes time for me to learn certain things everyone takes for granted, learning right now, at least at the time. Things are different today. So, as I'm learning these things, and trying to keep a good focus on what I'm learning. Well, I learned Huntington is definitely not a good place if you're homeless. Still, no bridges to live under. And also, still learning about time management. And, well, learned that some people have some pretty immense biases. Just before I ended up moving into a little studio apartment for the first time on my own, met a guy who had a pretty sour attitude when it came to white men with an afro. Yeah, I had a little bit more hair up here at the time. And he just told me, I don't believe white men naturally have afros. And I told him, you're looking at one. He said, you must be using some kind of hair product or something. There is no way a white man naturally has an afro. I should have remembered at the time that I am a good deal Irish by heritage. I should have told him, what, you never heard of an Irishman? That's natural. But no, I just didn't think about that. He was getting on my nerves, which can drive my nerves crazy and disrupt my thoughts a good bit. So yeah, those were the first couple times. Next testimony on homelessness, the next couple times, which were a lot crazier. Take care till then.